What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Joy Division from the compilation Substance. Thank you again to Mr. Solo, as well as all those who've been commenting in this still somewhat nascent deep dive. And the next track in the playlist is Transmission, which it's a single word title. It is a movement of information from one place to another, however that is being achieved. Of course, we're inclined to think of it as an electronic transmission, the coding of information either in the form of light or electrical signals across some distance, and thus a more immediate or at least quick way to impart perspective or crucial data from one place to another, from one person to another. And of course, all that might entail will depend on the specifics of the transmission as well as the sender and the recipient. I'll see if there's any insight I can pick up on a first listen. This is Joy Division. The track is Transmission, and it's from the Substance compilation. Wow. So, okay, like, first sonically, for the first, like, minute or so, I was thinking as it was warming up and the bass was really driving away and it had that, like, very early 80s feel. I was thinking, like, if Robert Smith started singing, I could totally hear this as a Cure song. Now, as it turns out, the vocals were very far away from that. And I did wonder, like, in the latter half, the vocals sounded like what I've come to expect, which, again, we're like 5 tracks in, so I don't really have any expectations, but the vocals sounded like I've heard them on previous tracks. At the very beginning, they sounded different. I was like, is that Ian Curtis? Like, it doesn't sound like the vocals I've heard on a few of the previous songs. They were sort of spoken, but even then, sort of in an affected voice. By the end, they had that scratch and, a bit of fire to them, and I enjoyed the, again, kind of post-punk energy. Though this one, again, it felt more like new wave sounding, and even when it got a bit edgier in the latter half, it still sounded like something, again, maybe that The Cure would do in their very early days, maybe something like early 80s Simple Minds. Like, it had a rock energy, but it also had a bit of a, like, new wave vibe. So I don't know if others will hear that, and obviously, again, I'm still very new to Joy Division's music, but definitely it sounded less raw than the first couple tracks that we heard, which, again, I get it. People mentioned at that point, they were really just learning how to play their instruments and, sort of recording in a very raw way. So, yeah, I'm already hearing a bit of the evolution of their sound, even if it's still notably different from Love Will Tear Us Apart, which, again, is like my only touchstone of familiarity as we continue with this deep dive in terms of what I knew prior. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Lyrically, I didn't catch much other than the obvious, like, dance, dance to the radio, which, like, okay, so that focuses it on the idea of a radio transmission, which technically is light, radio waves, but I'm thinking that, like, more than just being a prescription, a recommendation, a normative suggestion, maybe we're talking about the way that, like, transmissions can alter human behavior or make them do things because of the information they're receiving to their ears and brains. So I don't know if it's, like, thinking about it on a philosophical level, but again, like, the idea of highlighting the transmission, not just the music, not just, like, the information that's received and then broadcast through speakers, but the transmission of those radio waves themselves. I ended up thinking that, this could be about the way that these transmissions make humans do things that they might not otherwise. So either way, I very much enjoyed it. Early 80s sound, but again, in a slightly less raw and sort of, like, primitive way relative to the earlier tracks. And that's not to in any way slight the earlier tracks, but as I said, I can hear a sonic development in this tune relative to the first few tracks. So in any case, thank you again to Solo. Let me know what you think of this one, and I will see you for the next one. Peace.